All right, so among the matters lined up this morning, we'll start on that note. And our guests are in Abuja at the moment. Akwa?
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have two gentlemen with us to shed a little more light on what precisely transpired in Akwa Ibom State. Mr. Valentine Ofia is a legal practitioner. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning. And we also have Mr. Solomon Johnny, who is the former publicity secretary of the APC in Akwa Ibom State. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily as well.
Thank you very much.
Well, pretty controversial circumstances have arisen in Akwa Ibom State. Well, it's happened in one or two states where there were questions of placeholders, etc. But in Akwa Ibom State, it looks like the situation is even more peculiar, as we understand that the APC might not be fielding any candidates in the forthcoming election. What has led to this? I mean, some people say this has stemmed from the conduct of the party's congresses and the emergence of the party leadership, and as a result of the nullification of the party leadership, that something cannot stand on nothing, so to speak. The basis for which any other further election was going to be conducted was going to be null and void. Is that what happened in Akwa Ibom State?
The truth of the matter is that a man expects the natural consequences of his actions. I think what is happening to the APC in Akwa Ibom State is the natural result of setting aside the procedures of the Electoral Act and trying to set aside the outcome of the 16th October 2021 State Congress that the party conducted by Mr. Bangi Sharif and his team. The Congress produced Mr. Austin Ekanem as chairman, where he pulled 1,278 votes. And he was sworn in on 7th March 2022, shortly before the termination of the Mai Malaboni-led caretaker committee of the APC. The victory was set aside by a federal high court judgment that was delivered on 17th of April 2022, where the result was doctored to give Stephen Turekpo a victory at the Congress. And a stay of execution and notice of appeal was filed on 18th of April, and later on 7th of April, the Court of Appeal in Abuja granted an order that status quo should be maintained. And status quo is the state of affairs before a party gets to court. What led to the grievance? The grievance was that Mr. Stephen Turekpo claimed victory at the poll where it didn't actually happen. And so when the court said maintain status quo, the court was just like, do not destroy the rest. Let's hear and know whether you are right. So let the situation of things, which was that Mr. Austin Ekanem had already been sworn in, let that continue. That's status quo. But I think the main problem came when the Adamu-led NWC set aside the court order, breached the court order, and swore in Mr. Stephen Turekpo on shortly after the Court of Appeal judgment. And so we then had parallel exco in Akwa Ibom State. Now, when I said a person expects the natural consequence of his action, I mean to say that, you now had parallel exco running. And INEC had the prerequisite right to follow the court order, and it followed the court order that ordered status quo and decided to run with Mr. Austin Ekanem, while the party decided to run with Mr. Stephen Turekpo. So confusion set in. And as they were doing this, I think the party on its part was not reading the provisions of the 2022 Electoral Act that gives guidelines as to how candidates are to be nominated, how parties are to behave vis-a-vis the INEC guidelines. So what is happening in Akwa Ibom State today, which you rightly observe may lead to the party not feeling candidate in the 2023 election, is that the party, as they were struggling to set aside the October 16, 2021 result of the Congress, was also not looking at what were the provisions of the Electoral Act. They were not looking at the issues of the law, and that seems to be catching on the party at the moment.
Is that, do you agree, excuse me, with his own explanation? You're chuckling.
I have to.
Are there parts of that particular story? Because that's largely what has filtered into the public space.
That's a very long...
and that's what the public has. Do you have a different version?
Let me just say it in a polite manner. That's a very long, irrelevant narrative. You see, INEC has not disqualified anybody. And I can say that authoritatively because INEC has never held a meeting where such issues were discussed. And in fact, INEC has no powers to disqualify any candidate. You see, we have visited this issue several times, and the Supreme Court has pronounced on it several times. And in all those cases, the court made it clear that INEC as a body lacks the powers to disqualify any candidates of any political party. Once a political party submits the name of their candidate to INEC, INEC must accept it. What is going on today is that some people with vested interests have planted certain news in the media, confusing people. Now they talked about
confusing people?
Yes, they talked about.
Let me take you up on. You
Please
say people have planted certain news in the media,
yes,
confusing people. You talk about how INEC doesn't have powers to reject any candidate that the party gives it.
Yes.
But INEC is a monitor in congresses. Exactly. It monitors the primaries that political parties conduct. Is that monitoring role just for decoration?
They have observer status, and that is where it ends. If a political party today, I'll go as far as to say this, if a political party today submits the name of a monkey to INEC and say this monkey is our candidate, what INEC is bound to do is publish the name of that monkey and then let the public comment on it. They have no powers to disqualify anybody. Mr. Akpabio has not been disqualified by INEC. There's actually no news release from INEC where they have said that they disqualified. What happened is that the REC, the Resident Electoral Commissioner of Akwa Ibom State, went to the press to express his personal views that he prefers that Akpabio be disqualified. And that has triggered all the crises you see in that state today. People demonstrating, people feeling that right now INEC is no longer being impartial. Yes.
I do not think that a REC will just get up one day.
Let me explain.
And decides to
that happens.
Give his own personal.
But that is exactly what happened.
He has given a lineup of events which you have described as irrelevant. But in the eyes of the public, unless the APC is just holding these things to pull the wool over the people's eyes and really doesn't care about...
There's no crisis.
No, just a moment. Unless it doesn't care about processes, someone would think that if that is truly what transpired, that there was a Congress and that whoever it was that emerged winner in that Congress is being challenged, or his victory is being challenged, not in the manner that we know, but that results are being forged and another person is being recognized, and it doesn't matter what has transpired, but whoever's name is submitted to INEC is the person who the commission should go with. There'll be many questions around that, you don't think? Let's
clarify the situation once again. First, there's what you call the Congress. That's a separate issue.
Indeed. And I'd like you to start from the Congress.
Yes, I'll come back to that. And then you talk about the party primaries, where they nominate candidates of the party. That is a separate issue. We shouldn't mix the two together.
Indeed.
The Congress has nothing to do with nomination of primaries.
So then I'll start from the Congress.
Like in any organization, like politicians do, there's always a contest, people vying to fill offices. In Akwa Ibom State, people contested to fill the office of chairman of APC of Akwa Ibom State. There was a dispute. They took their disputes to court, the normal avenue, and the court determined the issue and gave its final judgment on the issue. And just before you started interviewing us, we saw a gentleman who was talking about INEC being partial and all that. And that gentleman today was the person who the court determined is the chairman of APC in Akwa Ibom State. Why are people still raising that controversy? It's been laid to rest. There are no factions in the state. There's a properly elected and recognized chairman of APC in the state. Then the next question now is, if that is the situation, why do we have all this noise and crisis up and down? It is simply this, that the rake of INEC, the Resident Electoral Commission of INEC in that state, has refused to recognize this court's judgment. Nothing more. And then you ask yourself, what powers does he have to do that? How can the court determine that somebody is the duly elected chairman of APC in that state, and the rec would say that he doesn't recognize such a person? It's unheard of.
Can I ask you, I mean, whether that's your reading of the situation as well? I mean...
I disagree with him when he says that INEC doesn't have the powers to disqualify candidates sent to them. Let's start from there.
No,
I think he has not, excuse me.
On the judgment.
I think he has not read Section 82(1) of the 2022 Electoral Act that guides political parties on how to do nomination, and Section 82(13) of the same act that empowers INEC to outrightly disqualify candidates sent to them by political parties if those candidates did not emerge in conformity with the provisions of the Electoral Act. That gives INEC the power to disqualify. Now, he talks about Congress. You cannot have a Congress where you don't have a party structure that organizes the Congress. And so the problem of APC starts from where somebody was elected and the video of that election covered by the press, independent press, circulated in the public is still very much available. People can watch when the Congress was conducted. The Stephen Turekbo of a person was not even at the venue of the Congress. He had a parallel Congress elsewhere. But what is disturbing is the fact that he tries to doctor the result of the Congress conducted by Alhaji Bangi Sherif.
Has the court determined this issue?
Now they try to bring a confusion about the court judgment that was issued by the Federal High Court here in Abuja on 17th of March. And a stay of execution, notice of appeal. He is a lawyer. He knows that most times an appeal acts as a stay of execution. When a matter is decided at the court of first instance, we have the court of appeal. We have the Supreme Court. Until a matter gets to the Supreme Court, that matter is deemed not to have been given fair hearing. And the Austin Kandem-led EXCO, as at this time we are talking, are in the court of appeal. They are appealing the judgment of the Federal High Court. Now, it was even two appeals that were filed at the Court of Appeal. The Mai Malaboni-led EXCO of the party had filed an appeal rejecting the judgment of the Federal High Court because relevant parties that would have allowed my lord to hear the matter properly, give parties fair hearing, were not brought to the court. How do you want to sack an EXCO that had been inaugurated, but you don't bring them to court? You sued people that had nothing to do with the matter. For instance, Senator John James Akpabio, who was the national secretary of the party at the time, was sued. When Austin Kandem, that you contend is the one that had taken their victory, was not sued at the court. And so the party, in its wisdom, advised that that judgment was not executable and then filed an appeal. Senator John Odoide, on his part also, having been sued at the lower court, had also lodged an appeal. Now, when I said the problem with the APC is caused by the national chairman of the party, His Excellency Senator Adamu, led NWC, I mean to say that, for instance, when we had a national convention here in Abuja, the decisions that were taken, for instance, the congresses that were done by Mai Malaboni led caretaker committee was ratified. Well, when Senator Adamu came, he went over those decisions, took interest in Akwa Ibom matter for whatever reasons, brought it out of about 150 cases that were pending on issues of congresses. He singled out Akwa Ibom, withdrew the matter, the appeal, and so the EXCO was not given fair hearing. but not for the fact that Senator John Odoide had filed a separate appeal. Having been sued at the court of first instance, the APC exco that was elected by Alhaji Bangi Sheriff Committee would not have been given fair hearing. So the same date that the party, that the Damule National Working Committee of the party withdrew from the appeal that was filed by Mai Malaboni, that same day the Court of Appeal sat on the appeal filed by Senator John James Akpan Odoidege and heard the appeal. The party argued that having withdrawn from the appeal, that the court didn't have the right to hear the appeal. But the question was Senator John Odoidege sued at the court of first instance? And the answer was yes. Now, if he had been sued, then he had the right to appeal. And it was on that appeal that a stay of execution kind of technically was given when the court ordered that status quo should be maintained. And status quo simply means that let parties maintain the position that they occupy. As at the day the court order was given, the question is, was Stephen Turekbo inaugurated as state chairman of the party? The answer is no. So why did the national chairman of the party not respect the order of court to maintain status quo? That is the beginning of the problem of the APC. Now, if we are to solve the problem of the APC, we just have to ask some people to obey the law. You see, the problem, he mentioned His Excellency Chief Godswill Akpabio. If you want to stampede His Excellency Chief Godswill Akpabio, put him in a position where he has to operate within the realm, within the ambit of the law. Put his supporters within the realm, the ambit of the law. You see the kind of crisis they are trying to cause in Akwa Ibom by trying to stampede INEC. INEC is an institution. INEC supervises political parties. INEC is like the headmaster. He cannot allow the pupils to go astray. Now, when INEC blows its whistle, every political party is supposed to listen. How do you set aside INEC supervision in an election? Let's see a situation where we go to the pool without INEC, which is what they are trying to do. And Mike Guinea in Akwa Ibom State, INEC is not the problem of APC. APC is its own problem. It is self-inflicted crisis, and they have to face it.
Let me flip this conversation to my colleagues who might not have questions for you. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Malcolm. Well, let me begin with, Mr. Vitalist, who was speaking the other time. Maybe you want to, first of all, begin by responding to, what your colleague there said about whether or not, the powers are there. You are a lawyer, so you would know better. The Electoral Act is very clear on that. So what's your? We'll show you the law later because I'm almost certain that you've read it. But what's your take? Does INEC, according to Section 8413 of the Electoral Act, have powers to not recognize any candidate that didn't go through due process, according to them?
INEC has no powers to First of all, when you talk about due process, the APC went through due process. They held their primaries. Somebody was elected, won the primaries, and the name of that person was forwarded to INEC. So the simple question is this: does INEC have the power to reject the name of any candidate forwarded to them by a political party? And the answer is clear, is no. And this is not my personal opinion. This is the opinion of the Supreme Court that has been given in several judicial judgments. Several judgments. And for you to understand where we are coming from, I have to take you back to events that occurred in this same country. There was a time when the chief executive, then the president, had a problem with his vice president who, so to speak, went to another party. And executive powers were deployed to ensure that that vice president was disqualified as a candidate in a forthcoming election. And that matter went before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, look, it's very clear, to avoid a situation where we foist a dictatorship on the country, the umpire, the INEC, has been deprived of powers to reject names of candidates forwarded to them by political parties. And this is a provision of the law. It's there, the Electoral Act. What the law is that anybody at all, whether it's INEC, whether it's an aspirant, whether it's a citizen, whoever has any complaint whatsoever about the candidacy of anybody has to approach the courts. Go to the court, present your case, and if it has merit, let the court order the disqualification of that person. But you cannot have the umpire who is supposed to be neutral descend into the political arena to choose candidates for political parties. How can INEC draw up the list of candidates for parties?
Just 1 second, Mr. Ophir.
A party submits the name of Mr.
Just a second. Makwe asked you a question the other time. Said, look, INEC observes the election. Is it for aesthetic purposes?
Yes.
Doesn't INEC also follow the election, take notes, note the people who have been elected at that election, the Congress that they monitored? Doesn't INEC have the authority or right to do that as well?
Let me clarify this, because there seems to be a misunderstanding here. I've said it before, that on June 9, the APC held their primaries and elected Mr. Akpabio. He participated in that primary. Do you understand that? And his name was forwarded to INEC. Now, we are saying that INEC has no powers to reject his name, even if they took notes at that primary.
That Congress that you talked about, Mr. Ophir, did INEC monitor that particular Congress?
Do you know why you shouldn't ask that question? Whether INEC monitored the Congress or not, the matter was taken to court and the court gave its judgment. What we should ask ourselves is, what is the judgment of the court? We cannot substitute the judgment of the court with INEC opinion.
Now, you are a lawyer, Mr. Ophir.
Are you going to
Just a second, Mr. Ophir.
The judgment of that court?
Mr. Ophir. You are a lawyer. The law says INEC must monitor the Congress of a party. If INEC does not monitor the Congress of that party, is that Congress valid?
Of course. The law is very clear that INEC can choose not to... Hold on. That INEC can choose not to monitor the Congress. What is essential is that the party notified INEC.
What section of the law is that? What section of the law is it that says that INEC has the option of not attending the Congress?
I'm going to read it out to you right away, because let's put to rest this controversy.
That's the new electoral.
This is the Electoral Act, yes, 2022, yes. So that let's put this controversy to bed. You know, because there is no way. What the law said. Let's go to 82.2. And I'm going to read it out. It says, the commission may, with or without prior notice to the political party, attend and observe any convention, congress, conference, or meeting, which is convened by a political party. Isn't that clear that they may, with or without any notice, attend? And it's up to them. What matters is that the party has given notice to INEC. And if INEC does not attend, that does not invalidate that. But in the APC primaries in which we are considering, INEC, notice was given to INEC, and INEC attended. What the controversy is here is that the rec of that state said that he would not recognize the candidate of the party. That's what the controversy is. It is not the Congress, it is not the primaries.
What about Section 84, 1 and 2?
What does it say?
Okay, look.
Section 84. What about Section 84, 1 and 2?
Yes.
And also Section 13. I mean, Section 84, subsection 13.
84 just simply says that the party can choose whether to conduct its primaries via indirect.
Let me read what I
direct.
have. Section 84, 1 and 2 says a political party seeking to nominate candidates for elections under this act shall hold primaries for aspirants to all elective positions, which shall be monitored by the commission.
Exactly.
Which shall be monitored by the commission. And I know that lawyers don't joke lightly. I don't joke at all with the word shall. But let me finish. The procedure for the nomination of candidates by political parties for the various elective positions shall be direct, indirect primaries, or consensus. And then 8413 says, where a political party fails to comply with the provisions of this act in the conduct of its primaries, its candidates for election shall not be included in the election for the particular position in issue.
And now let's relate this law you have read out to the facts. The fact is this: on June 9, the APC held its primaries for the relevant senatorial district in question, Akwa Ibom Northwest. After conducting that primaries, I'll answer all your questions. The name of Mr. Akpabio was forwarded to the commission. Now, the REC, not the commission, they are two different things. The REC of Akwa Ibom said he would not recognize that nomination. That is what the problem is. The problem is not that the APC did not conduct primaries. They have complied with the law. The problem is that the REC said that he will not recognize that. And then I'll take you to another thing.
Let me flip this back to Lagos, because I know that they still have questions. But I interrupted because you were reading a particular part of the law, which you were saying says that INEC can or cannot or can
definitely.
Yeah,
once
but
they receive notice.
It does look here that whatever elections or primaries, whatever primaries the parties are holding, it shall be monitored by the commission. And I know that shall usually spells must.
No, not necessarily. What is important is that the party gave them notice of it. Okay. If they choose not to attend, they are the ones defaulting. It's not the business of the party.
Let's flip this back to Lagos. Gentlemen.
Yes. Well, yes, Nancy Nwako, we need to go to a quick break, but we'll return and take a look at some other materials and get the gentlemen to respond to them in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back, Mr. Valentine, Ophir, and Solomon Journey are still with us, talking about the developments in Akwa Ibom State. Well, Mr. Journey had mentioned and cited Section 84 of the Electoral Act, of which Mr. Ophir did say, look, there's a court's judgment that has settled the matter, that INEC cannot reject the candidates if they are submitted to them. But then, Mr. Ophir, you were going to explain further specifically about your understanding of that section 8413, which I also read to you about the powers of INEC with respect to a candidate. So when you say that they've got no powers to reject a candidate, does that section 8413 validate your point or not?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
But it clearly states there that they've got the powers to reject if they are not validly
read it again. Read
nominated.
it again. And no. It didn't say that.
Okay, let's.
It says that if you don't conduct valid primaries, that you may be excluded.
If you
now,
fail, it says where a
powers?
political party fails to comply with the provisions of this act and the conduct of its primaries, the candidate for election shall not be included in the election for the particular position in issue. So, isn't that clear enough?
And no, if you want to find out who has the powers to decide whether that political party would be included or not, please go to 8414 and read it. Would you like me to read it for you?
From your understanding, tell us what you said.
No, let me read it. Not my understanding. Let's read the law. Not my understanding. Let's read the law.
If you read the law, you will still tell us from... Okay, go ahead.
Notwithstanding the provisions of this act or rules of a political party, an aspirant who complains that any of the provisions of this act and the guidelines of a political party have not been complied with in the selection or nomination of a candidate of a political party for election may apply to the Federal High Court for redress, not apply to the REC of the state for redress. That's all I've been saying since.
So, in this particular case...
If you have any problems, hold on. If you have any problems with the nomination of Mr. Akpabio, apply to the Federal High Court.
Who is to apply? The party or INEC?
Whoever has problems.
No. So, who has problem now?
If you know you have any problem, I don't know. If you don't have any problems with his nomination, please go and apply to the Federal High Court.
What exactly
for the court
is your
to order
point?
his disqualification.
What has INEC done wrong in this case from your perspective?
I'm going to explain in 4 sentences. The first thing is INEC has done nothing wrong because INEC has not disqualified anybody. The second thing is the rec of the state, the resident electoral commissioner of that state, who has no powers to disqualify anybody, went to the press and announced that somebody had been disqualified. And that is what has deceived the nation. The third thing is this, that it's clear that we understand this, that INEC is different from the rec, that INEC is made up of the chairman of INEC and the National Electoral Commissioners, which is collectively they are referred to as INEC. And decisions that this collective body take are the official decisions of INEC. The personal opinion or decisions of the rec are not the decisions of INEC. And we have been mixing this up all along. That the rec of the state granted a press interview and said somebody has been disqualified is not the same as saying that INEC disqualified the person.
All right, let me...
Nobody has been disqualified by INEC.
There's a document published, the APC candidates list, the outcome of valid primaries monitored by state office and sent to INEC headquarters from Akwa Ibom State Office. They published the names of the senatorial, the House of Representatives, those whose names are there, which appears on the screen, submitted to INEC, which informs whatever decision and actions taken by INEC. This is the one by INEC. Is that right or not?
Now, when you take a look at that list, what you are going to find is a clear infraction of both the law, Electoral Act, and the Constitution. We all know that the party said and announced to everybody that the name they forwarded to INEC was the name of Mr. Akpabio. Now, when you look at that list, you find out that his name is not on that list. And then you ask yourself, why is his name not on that list? Does the rec have the powers to substitute his name with any name that he likes?
Did the rec substitute his name? That's the list submitted, isn't it? Isn't that the one submitted by the party?
No, that's not the list submitted by the party. No.
Okay. Mr. Johnny?
Party did not submit that list.
All right. But this is the one INEC says they monitored, the ones that complied with the laws. But Mr. Johnny, you
that
heard...
is the one...
Okay, just a minute. Mr. Johnny, what's your impression on us? So is that the one submitted by the party or not? I mean, you're a member of the APC.
All right. The problem we have with this narrative is that people are trying to use our heads, and I want the media to be strong and to look at the facts and details. The governorship nomination of the APC was billed for 26 May 2022. The senatorial nominations that is an issue now was billed for 27th May. And on the senatorial nomination that was billed for 27th May, INEC monitored the nomination, and the name that you saw on the screen, Mr. Akpabio, DIG, retired, was the man who emerged as winner of the contest at the Korepene, and INEC was there. They monitored. They saw the result. Let us not be led to believing that INEC does not have a role to play in an election. INEC plays a supervisory role. INEC ensures that rules are followed. It is the discretion of INEC to accept whatever the party sends to them or not to accept. And what INEC has just done is to exercise its powers under Section 84, Sub 18 of the Electoral Act by not accepting what they did not supervise, what they did not see. And that is correct. Now, he tries to tell us that those who are aggrieved, like His Excellency Chief Godswill Akpabio, can go to court. Yes, that's correct. Chief Godswill Akpabio can go to court to prove that INEC is wrong to have rejected his name and to have accepted the name of DIG Udom Udom in his state, and that would be right. But INEC has served the vulnerable. There are people, because they tell us there in Akwa Ibom State that what money cannot do, more money can do, and that the court can be bulldozed, the court can be truncated, and then they can have their way. That's the thing that is going on in Akwa Ibom State. What you see right now is a man standing between the law and the people who will not have the capacity to bulldoze the Nigerian judicial system and then have his way. We appreciate Mike Igini in Akwa Ibom State. We appreciate INEC, what they are doing. You know, we have had this experience in 2011, if we are to have the benefit of time to go back to history. In 2011, we had a victory at the 2011
Mr. Johnny,
general
just hang on a minute.
We have records that
we're running out of time, so just to establish some things, let me go to Mr. Ofia. Look, there's a portal that all politicians, political parties are on, the dates where the elections, primaries are supposed to hold. So tell us, if you say Senator Akpabio participated in the process, what date did his own primaries hold, and who monitored it? Which INEC official monitored?
June 9, monitored by INEC.
June 9, monitored by INEC.
Simple question.
Hang on a minute, just hang on.
Yes. Now,
which INEC official monitored it?
You go and look at their documents from here, from your studios here.
You tell us. You said it was June 9.
Monitored by INEC.
You said it was June 9, so that means you are aware of all the details. So tell us, which INEC official monitored it?
Oh, definitely.
Which official monitored it?
That is what I'm saying. I can't reel off their names off head.
Okay, tell me one name.
I can't stay here and mention names of people.
Give us one name.
I said I can't memorize the names of people I don't know, but I want to say this.
Okay,
I want to
hold on.
this.
Which
you asked him a very
INEC...
simple question. Was that the list submitted by the party?
So, Mr.
That is the
Ofia,
question.
You want to ask your questions and answer your questions. You say INEC monitored. Which official monitored it?
Which official?
Which INEC official monitored?
So we
hold them to account. But you know the process for which INEC sends...
hold the commission to account, not individuals.
But you can't tell us who monitored.
I think I can help my brother.
Not individuals. It is not a personal thing.
I think I can
it's
help
an
my
official
brother.
act of the commission.
I think I can help
you
my brother.
You don't start naming individuals and holding them to account.
All right, let's show you this.
If you allow me, I can help my brother.
You said it was June 9. Just hold on. You'll come in a minute. Hold on. You said it was June 9. But the list that we do have there, where politicians subscribe to and put up, is that INEC also corroborated. The date for that is 27. So how come yours is June 9?
Yes, because the REC decided, what happened was that the REC attended an illegal meeting convened by the faction, by the people who lost in court, and went there and illegally certified whatever they did with that meeting held on the 27th, and then uploaded this. Now, the question the question you asked me was, did the party submit, whether what INEC reflected is the same as the list submitted by the party? And I said no.
Who submitted June 9? Who submitted June?
And then the REC substituted the names.
Ms. Ofia, just hang on a minute.
The party,
who submitted June 27 to that portal?
Nobody. The party did not. The REC came up with that on his own.
I think I need to help him.
All right, Mr.
That's what I have been saying all along.
Just hang on. Mr. Johnny, is that right?
It's wrong. It's wrong in his assessment. Political parties' right to independent National Electoral Commission as to when they are going to conduct their primaries. And for APC, the senatorial election was to be conducted on 27th May. That is shown on that screen. And on that date, the man that emerged as winner of that Congress is DIG Udom Udom. Chief Godswill Akpabio was not billed for that nomination. He was a presidential aspirant. He campaigned and had bought presidential nomination form, which it is on record that he stepped down for His Excellency Ahmed Bola Tinubu, and then afterward just rushed down and nocturnally announced himself as senatorial candidate. There was no INEC monitoring of that fast that they conducted at Ikot. There was no INEC presence. INEC was not there. The party was not informed. And so we can discard that nothing really happened on the 6th of the date he mentioned. the nomination that is known to law that about the Ikot Central District, the Akwa Ibom State Northwest, is the one conducted on the 27th of May, in which D.I. Udome Budom emerged as winner.
Okay,
there
well,
was no
Mr. Johnny,
in Akwa Ibom
just
State.
just a quick question on that. Do you know the INEC officials that led the team or that monitored this election you're talking about?
The one that purportedly produced
No,
Chief
the
Gospel
one
Akpabio?
you are talking about, the one of May 27 that you're talking about.
It was supervised by a team dispatched by Barrister Mike Ikini, the rec of Akwa Ibom State. There's no controversy about that.
Okay. Let me ask Mr. Ofia. You said earlier, Mr. Ofia,
Yes,
that INEC may or may not monitor the Congress. And by that, you probably were even saying that the election that you're talking about was not monitored by INEC. And you're now making a U-turn, it would seem, and saying that it was monitored.
I never said it was not monitored by INEC. I said it was monitored by INEC, but I cannot reel out names of people.
Earlier, you quoted.
That is what I said.
Earlier, you quoted section
and I also
84.1.
told
Just
you.
1 second.
And I also,
earlier, you quoted section 84.1 that INEC may choose to not monitor the Congress.
Oh, definitely. If you give them notice to attend and monitor an event, they are an independent body. They may choose not to come.
Okay, so
It's up to them.
was the election, the Congress you are
event.
talking about, was it monitored by INEC?
It was monitored by INEC,
Okay.
and I've said that several times.
Do you
and
know?
I've also said that
just a second. Mr. Johnny
name
said just a while
INEC.
ago that they know that the team that monitored the election of May 27 was dispatched by Mr. Igini, who is the resident electoral commissioner in Akwa Ibom State. Who dispatched the team?
Exactly.
Who dispatched the team that monitored the election you are talking about on June 9?
Now, you have asked me a question that will expose the fraud going on here. I said the REC has chosen to dispatch teams to go and monitor events being organized by people who are not officers of APC. And I have also told you that the officers of APC were determined by the judgment of the court, which the REC has decided to ignore. And I've also told you that the proper officers of APC organized the proper primaries monitored by INEC and submitted the name of the person who emerged from that primaries to INEC. And I've also told you that after receipt of this name, that this REC substituted this name with his own name. And I've told you to ask him, did the party submit to INEC the name of the person this REC published as the candidate of the party?
Okay, so Mr. Johnny, briefly answer the
matter.
So, Mr. Johnny, could you briefly answer? Did the party submit that?
Now, the fact that you need to understand is that as at the time that the governorship, senatorial, the House of Assembly nominations were conducted, Stephen Turekpo was not the state chairman of the party. Stephen Turekpo became the state chairman of the party when the court order that order status quo was vacated, and a letter was written to INEC recognizing Stephen Turekpo on the 12th of June.
So the party didn't submit that?
Everything about nomination.
So the party did not submit
it.
All right. Okay, gentlemen, just
what the party
me.
submitted.
We need to see how we can wrap up soon. But so, Mr. Ofia, was Senator Akpabio screened for the senatorial position?
Senator, yes, he was.
He was screened?
What he did,
okay, so he bought the form. He bought the form for that position?
He bought both forms. He bought the forms for presidential, he bought the forms for senatorial. Yes,
and he attended the screening on the same day?
And he attended the screening, and not just the screening, but participated in the primaries and
for
won.
both?
And then everybody knew he stepped down when it came to the presidential primaries. Everybody knew that.
Okay.
But went back and participated in the senatorial.
All right, let's get another lawyer in on this, gentlemen, because we need to also wrap up as soon as we can. Mr. Daniel Bola joins us this morning. He's also a member of your party. Mr. Bola, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program. Well, you may have caught some parts from the point of law, interpretation and understanding of sections 84.12 electoral. What is the power of INEC? What can they do or cannot do when it comes to monitoring and accepting list of candidates for primaries? What do you think?
So the context is that before the 2022 Electoral Act, the power to reject the candidate was taken away from INEC. That once a political party submits the name of a candidate, INEC has no right to reject. INEC will just go ahead with that candidate so that any aggrieved party can approach the poll. But by the 2022 Electoral Act amendment, the burden of approaching the court has now been shifted to the party that INEC refused to accept his name. So it is right that if a primaries is conducted by a political party and observed by INEC, INEC has a duty, because the idea behind the observance is to ensure that the provisions of the Electoral Act and the guidelines of the party is followed. Now, anybody who does not comply with that, even if the political party submit the name of that person to INEC, INEC is not obligated to accept that name. And the person to approach the court is no longer INEC, it's no longer the party or the winner, quote unquote, but the person who is complaining that the conduct of the primaries did not favor him. So in this case, it is Akpabio that should approach the court, but not the other candidates who, based on the testimony of INEC, passed through the due process and his name was submitted and duly accepted by law.
Mr. Ballard, so many questions flying in my head now, and I'm limited to maybe just one or two. But quickly speak to Section 8414, which Mr. Ofia quoted earlier. Notwithstanding the provisions of this act or rules of a political party, an aspirant who complains that any of the provisions of this act and the guidelines of a party have not been complied with in selection of nomination of a candidate of a political party for election may apply to the Federal High Court. That's what you just addressed now. But, there's something that Mr. Ofia said just now, that a candidate bought the form for presidential election and senatorial election. Is that something the law welcomes, or is it something that the law is silent on?
Now, because there is no express provision in the Electoral Act that prohibits that, so INEC cannot hold it against the political party, for example. But even the course of contesting for the post that he has bought the form for, he violates any of the provisions of the Electoral Act in the conduct of his electioneering process or the primaries, then INEC is not obligated to accept the name. So assuming you participated in the presidential, you participated in the senatorial, but based on the provisions of the Electoral Act, you fail to comply with the procedure for senatorial, but you have complied with presidential, you cannot come to INEC and expect that INEC will accept your name. Even if, now take note of this, even if the political party submit the name of that candidate that did not comply with the provisions of the Electoral Act, INEC is not obligated to accept that name, which is what you have seen there. And these two sections are to be read in conjunction, no longer in isolation. In the past, you could interpret it in isolation, but now it has to be in conjunction. Compliance, number one, based on the observance of INEC, and number two, the person whose name was rejected is the person that will approach the court to seek interpretation.
Much indeed, Mr. Daniel Bala, legal practitioner.
Thank you.
Akwa?
Indeed, we still have our guests here, and I'm sure they have been listening diligently. I just want to ask you quickly, that section 8413.
Yes.
Who has the power? I'm very curious. Who has the power to determine when the process has not been followed? Who has the power to determine that?
Two provisions of that law clearly stipulated who has the powers to pronounce on the qualification or disqualification of a candidate. You may look at 29.3 first. Then you look at 8414. And then what is peculiar about 29.3 is that it says that once INEC receives the names and the particulars of the candidates submitted by the party, they are bound to publish it, not to alter that list, as they have done in this instance.
Let me clarify this. Where a political party fails to comply with the provisions of this act in the conduct of its primaries, its candidates for election shall not be included in the election for the particular position in issue. Who has that power?
The court, the Federal High Court.
Federal
High Court. Look at the name, named in 14.
No. Who has the power to determine that a political party has failed to comply with the provisions of the Act?
Only the Federal High Court. only.
That
Not
is not
INEC.
correct.
Only the Federal High Court.
That is not correct.
If we, I don't know, you disagree with him. Why?
Of course, the law is very clear there. We don't need to... law is an art. All of us can read it. The law is here, the Electoral Act 2022. And it says the INEC as an institution will filter what it accepts so that the law will be followed.
Where does it say that? In the...
I had quoted section 8413, which we highlighted. And it uses the word shall. Shall is compulsorily.
Section 8413 is what I just read. But the question,
Yes.
what I'm saying is that it seems to be silent on who. It would seem that what has happened in Akwa Ibom State is that the REC in the state has determined that this is what the Electoral Act says, and that the process, as far as he knows, and as far as the commission represented by him monitored in Akwa Ibom State, certain provisions were not complied with. And as far as he knows, names cannot just emanate and then he accepts them. That is not how it is. That's simply what is stipulated in the Electoral Act.
There is no confusion as to...
You seem to disagree with that, saying that it is the High Court which has the powers to determine...
The question is it the High Court? The question is it the High Court that conducts elections?
Just a moment.
Just a moment.
INEC?
Let him respond to that.
Let me clarify once again and say this. This is not my personal opinion. This is the opinion of the Supreme Court while interpreting this same provision of the law. And the Supreme Court said, and I'm going to quote them verbatim, it said, the Independent National Electoral Commission lacks the power to disqualify any candidate on its own. The power of disqualification of any candidate from contesting an election after his name has been forwarded to the commission belongs exclusively to the Federal High Court. That is the Supreme Court of Nigeria. So it is not my personal opinion.
Just a moment. This was the Supreme Court before the new Electoral Act, isn't that?
Interpreting not before.
2010 Electoral Act.
Interpreting the same provisions.
No, that's not correct.
That same provision.
That's not correct. The Supreme Court was deciding on the 2010 amended Electoral Act as amended.
This provision, was it included?
Yes.
Was it a part of the 2010 Electoral Act?
It wasn't. It wasn't.
I'm sure that lawyers are out there and they're watching. And members of the National Assembly are also watching this.
It was a part of it. It's not new.
The 2022 Electoral Act, as we have it here, has not been subjected to any judicial review yet. It has just been signed to law in March by President Muhammadu Buhari. We are just testing it now. Now, no court decision, no decided case whatsoever. What he is quoting is a decided case on 2010 Electoral Act. As far as we are concerned, this law has not gone to court yet. It is only, for instance, Chief Constable Akpabio has started the process. We will now like to see what the Supreme Court will say about INEC's power as stated in this constitution.
Without prejudice to what you've said, the Electoral Act 2022, much as yes, it is a brand new law because, I mean, the amendments were so many that they had to just rename it 2022. I'm curious because it would seem that it's largely an improvement or supposed to be an improvement on what we had in 2010. Isn't that
That's correct?
So if that is the case, it means that not all the provisions are entirely new. Isn't that correct?
Now laws are made to correct problems.
I understand that. What I'm saying, what I'm asking you is whether this particular provision is a new insertion or it has been in the Electoral Act before now.
You remember that political parties had the powers.
It's a simple yes or no. Totally out of time.
No. It's not something we can say yes or no so that we don't confuse ourselves. Before now, political parties had the powers. They can just write names and submit. They can just substitute anyhow. If this was to be 2010, Udome Budom would have been out of the game and we wouldn't be here talking. It is that the law now mandates INEC to supervise, monitor, and scrutinize who goes in to stand election. And that is why INEC is insisting that we saw and monitor D.I. Udome Budom, and that is the name that they are to submit. And that's the law.
I've been told that we need to go right now. I see something here. 14C grants political parties the right to challenge the actions, decisions, or activities of the Independent National Electoral Commission, disqualifying its candidate from participating in an election. So it would seem that some people are saying that, under the Constitution and the new Electoral Act, INEC has powers to reject candidates that did not emerge from the primary. I think that will certainly be something perhaps, you know,
their
will
opinion
be tested,
cannot equate to that of the Supreme Court.
Will be tested will be tested moving forward. But gentlemen, we have to thank you both for coming on this morning. We've had a pretty lengthy conversation, and I hope that it has not left our viewers a little more confused, but at least has shed more light on what the situation is in Akwa Ibom. Valentine Ofia is a legal practitioner, and Mr. Solomon Johnny is a former publicity secretary of the APC in Akwa Ibom State. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Edition.
Thank you.
We'll take a break at this time. We'll be back shortly to discuss another matter. Please stay with us.